Right guys, I'm pretty ill, so that's why my voice might sound a little different, but I do want to get a video out, so do bear with this. Right, so we know the upcoming MacBook Pros could get new chips, but are we going to see any other upgrades? Well, we do have a report regarding that, and so let's delve into it. So a pretty credible Mac rumor source, who by the way in the past was the first to spill the beans regarding the Mac Studio, tells us we could see high bandwidth RAM with the MacBook Pros. So in case you weren't aware, the current MacBook Pros do have LPDDR5 RAM. Now this provides M1 Pro with 200 gigs per second of memory bandwidth, and the Macs can go up to 400 gigs per second. Now we can assume these new MacBooks are going to use Samsung's newer RAM chips, and they provide 33% increased memory bandwidth and 20% less power consumption. And so that should roughly result in 300 gigs per second for the M2 Pro chip and 600 gigs per second for the M2 Max. Now that is a nice change, but of course, much like the chip upgrades, these are not going to be revolutionary changes, and so for most of you guys with M1 models, definitely do not get this. And for those waiting for these M2 models, I still personally think that based on the M2 chip, the upgrades are not going to be major enough, so you're better off getting the M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros for a lower price. Since the source does also tell us that as expected, prices outside of the US for these M2 models are going to be insane. So of course, if you're not willing to spend a lot more for these Macs, I would either shop on the refurb store or of course look at third parties. Because even before the release of the M2 models, there are massive deals on the M1 variants, and I'm sure those deals are going to get better once of course we see these Macs release. So yeah, still not super excited for these MacBooks. I'm more excited about the Mac Mini with the M2 Pro chip, which by the way, side note, the source says nothing about, and so I'm praying Gurman is right, and we see Mac Minis launch with the MacBook Pros via press releases in a few weeks. Anyways, let's delve into your comments regarding future Macs. So JD's wondering about the fan noise with the M2 and M2 Pro Mac Mini, and I do believe that for most use cases, there might be slightly more fan noise because the M2 does seem to be running hotter than the M1 chip due to the high TDP, so I do think it's fair to say we can expect the same with the M2 Pro chip. But do remember, this is still going to be a lot quieter than the Intel machines, and also of course for those getting the M2 models, I'm sure that for light use, there will still basically be no fan noise. It's just that for more intensive work, where the increased GPU cores could come into play, that could increase the fan noise. So Apple Sheep 125 says, they do not believe the jack is going with the Mac Mini, and I agree with this completely, because the Mac Mini has terrible speakers, it needs to be connected to peripherals, and so having a headphone jack's gonna be pretty important, and I doubt that Apple's gonna force us to use Bluetooth with the Mac Mini. Like if Apple was to remove the headphone jack with the Mac, I think that would be the MacBook Air, because for the target audience, most of them are regular consumers using AirPods, and so they could care less about the headphone jack. But yes, the M2 Mac Mini should keep the jack. So Chipotle Man says, damn, I was hoping for a redesign, I guess I'll keep my M1 Mac Mini and see what happens. Just upgraded to the 1TB, 16GB unified memory version 2 and it's been excellent. Loads of good deals on them on Amazon right now. I even saw the 2TB version for $1,700. And yes, Mac Mini deals from third parties have been excellent. And yeah, to be honest, much like the M2 MacBook Air, I do think the M1 model is going to cannibalize sales of the M2 version because there are just so many good deals out there from third parties that are way below retail price. Since, like I discussed in my MacBook Air videos, the M2 version being $11.99 retail and of course the M1 being way below that at around $849 through retailers, that does make the M2 version hard to justify, especially since the actual upgrades with the M2 chip really are not that major. So yeah, I do think that's going to be the case with this Mac Mini, because while I'm sure there will not be any price hikes with the M2 version, I'm also sure there's going to be major discounts on the M1 version, deals that are even better than they are right now, so of course, that's going to be pretty compelling for most consumers. So Alien AI 2.0 says, not excited for the upcoming price hikes for these MacBook Pros. Now, if you're referring to the US, I don't think there's going to be price hikes there because we were predicting the 14 series would get price hikes, but that was not the case. And so yes, I doubt such minor refreshes to the MacBook Pros are going to warrant a price hike. However, if you're referring to the rest of the world, then yes, we could see price hikes. We saw major price hikes with the 14 series, and so I'm pretty anxious about the pricing for these Macs, and if it's really outrageous, I think you're better off getting the 2021 models. Now, Isaac, I believe, apologies if I'm butchering your name, but they say the Mac Pro should release at the October event, since Apple ideally is going to stick to the 2-year transition that, of course, they did announce in 2020, and they also believe that yes, this chip should be called the X1 or the Z1. And I'm glad you agree with that, and regarding the release, yes, that is a fair point. Apple does want to stick to the 2-year cycle, but of course, do remember that with the chip shortage, I don't think Apple's going to stick to that plan strictly as such. Since let's say the iPhone needs the chip resources first, Apple's easily going to do that and delay the Mac Pro release because it's a low volume product. And yeah, I guess they could announce it and then release it months later like they've done in the past, but ultimately I do still think the Mac Pro's not going to release just yet, and we might have to wait till WWDC. Anyways, they also ask whether the Mac Pro could get 4 M2 Ultra chips instead of 4 M2 Max chips. Now that could give us ludicrous performance, and yeah, there is a possibility Apple could do this, but once again, it depends on the chip shortage. I'm sure producing such a high-end chip is not gonna be easy, so of course, Apple might have to limit themselves and give us a chip based on 2 M2 Ultras instead of 4 chips. But once we do see chip production go back to normal, then yes, maybe I could see Apple do this. So Tom and Tech hopes M2 Pro, Max and Ultra are 3nm since M2 was a lackluster refresh, and they want bigger upgrades. And yes, I'm also hoping for the same because, for the most part, the M2 Pro / Max, that's a mouthful, but anyways, these Macs are gonna be pretty boring because the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro are not getting new designs, and so the chip upgrades have to be the main USP. So of course, to make up for the lack of upgrades, I'm hoping Apple does give us chips based on the 3nm process. Anyways, that's about it, guys. But of course, tell me your thoughts regarding this report in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors. Check out the video link above on details regarding the M2 iPad Pros. And on that note, see ya, peeps.